Alright, so this is obviously not a video game channel. I've never talked about a video game before. I like to play them. Used to be really into it when I was, a kid and a teenager, but in my advanced years, I don't play as much. Like, it's rare that I play a couple of hours a week. But the thing is, Final Fantasy VII is special. I never got to play it during its original run, and over the years, I heard from friends and acquaintances how great it was. You know, it makes a lot of top 10 lists of the greatest games of all time, and I never got to play it on the PlayStation 1. I might have gotten to play like a demo version of it, but that's it. I bought it on my Switch last year, and along with all the other Final Fantasy games that are available on the Switch, and I had planned to start with 7 and play 8, 9, 10, 12, and 15. And I played through 7, and within the first 5 hours, I was like, this is epic. I was really impressed and kind of disappointed it took me this long to play it. And it took me about 6 months to beat, again, because I only play like an hour or two a week, if that, because I'm so busy with writing and then with work. But I finally beat it about a month ago, and I've been thinking about it, the game, since then. It's stayed with me. And the reason I want to talk about it is because of the story. And to kind of talk about it from a writer's point of view, because I can talk about the gameplay a little bit, but I feel like that's a bit out of my league and it's not necessarily my thing. But telling great stories is something that I aspire to do. And Final Fantasy VII has a great story and great characters. You play Cloud Strife, who is this sort of muscle for hire. He is hired by these freedom fighters called Avalanche, who are basically trying to destroy these reactors around the city of Midgar, because these reactors are sucking up the energy from the Earth and slowly killing the Earth. And basically, Cloud is like, I'm just in it for the money, but eventually, as the story progresses and he meets a girl named Aerith, he starts to become more emotionally invested, and it's very much a story about a small group of people versus a big corporation. But there's also a bigger universal story about the planet and the energy within it, and this evil guy named Sephiroth that wants the energy for himself. And there's a lot to it that I can't get into because of spoilers, and it's just so big that I don't know if I can cover it in one of my typical videos. I very rarely have a game where I'm emotionally invested, or when I get choked up when a certain character gets killed off or hurt or loses somebody, but this is a very emotionally driven story. And that's saying something, because it's 20 years old. All the dialogue is written and printed out on the screen for you. There's no voice acting. But yet, all these characters have a specific personality. You always know who is talking. And all of them develop. Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, Aerith, and some of the other people you meet along the way and add to your party. They all grow, and you all feel for them when they lose things and when they get hurt along the way of the journey. Like I said, not a lot of video games have done that for me. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. I understand why people put it on such high regard. It still holds up in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of visuals in the game where I was like, wow. There's this scene where some sort of creature comes out of the water, and it's this gigantic thing that dwarfs all the characters, and the water's like running off it. It's extremely impressive for a PlayStation 1 game. Yes, I played it on my Switch and it's been remastered, but it's just the PlayStation 1 graphics in higher detail, if that makes sense. It's still more or less the same engine. It's just the picture's clearer, It hasn't been remastered like Final Fantasy VIII has, or remade like the most recent Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, visually, it's incredible. It's an incredible game. It was revolutionary for its time, and I vis and it's just a lot of the backgrounds that you see while you're exploring the world is just it's great to look at. And hands down, one of my favorite aspects of the game was its soundtrack. I love the soundtrack so much that I downloaded the soundtrack for the remake. And the soundtrack for the remake is something that I listen to every week, and I have for the past like 3 months. It's terrific. And eventually I am going to buy the soundtrack for the original, because I've listened to it on YouTube and I was like, this stuff is really terrific. It's great writing music, and it's fun, it's heartfelt, and it gets you pumped for certain scenes. It's just blows my mind what they were able to do with the PlayStation 1, because I remember playing games on PlayStation 1, and some of them, it's like a lot of them don't really hold up. They're still fun games, and there's a lot that have been remastered and put on modern consoles, but it's just great what the developers were able to do. And even with all the technology at its core, what makes Final Fantasy special is its characters and its story. I felt very attached to the values at the core of the story, because I'm very much for saving the environment and trying to make sure that we conserve resources and make sure that we don't kill the planet or just throw trash out and litter. I feel very strongly about that, and so Final Fantasy VII has a very environmental story about it, and it's a game that I would recommend everybody play. And the great thing about playing Final Fantasy VII now is I would understand if you didn't want to get into it on the PlayStation 1, because it's a hard game. Like, there are times where I died trying to defeat a boss 4 or 5 times. But now on Switch, computer, and other modern consoles, they've added something where you can toggle your characters to fill up their health bars like the second they get hit, and it also activates their limit breaks, which is like their most powerful attacks. So that way, if you're having trouble with the boss, that way you can activate those abilities. And there's also the option to make your characters run faster while they're exploring the world. Like, there's 3 times speed, and you could also turn off random encounters. And I use the 3 times speed a lot because, I mean, the world is gigantic. And I used the limit break and healing option a couple times because I was just like, man, I just want to get on with the story. And to me, playing Final Fantasy VII wasn't just about learning the best power-ups and the best way to match your materia. It's like there's a lot of people that do that, and more power to you. But for me, I was more invested in the story instead of the gameplay itself. The gameplay is a lot of fun. It feels like playing chess in a lot of ways and figuring out the best strategy. But at the end of the day, I got sick of getting defeated over and over again. I was like, okay, I just need to nuke this guy with limit breaks, and so that way I can get on with the story. So I think that for gamers or new gamers that are not into the high strategy of what the original Final Fantasy was, can have that option now. So really, it's a game that I would recommend to everybody because of the story and because of the characters. And again, if you're concerned about hard gameplay, you can turn on those power-ups to make the game easier for you, because for me, the most important part of the game was its story and its characters. And it's why I would tell everybody to play this game. It still holds up from a story and character standpoint, and it's still visually impressive, and I can't wait to play the other entries. I'm about 4 hours into Final Fantasy VIII, and I'm going to talk about all of them. I think that's going to be a special thing for me to do on my channel. I'm not going to start talking about video games in general, but I think the Final Fantasy series is so special that I want to talk about them, because even only being 4 hours into Final Fantasy VIII, it feels like the story is something that is well investing. So Final Fantasy VII, have you played the original? Did you play it on PlayStation? Have you played it on one of the more modern consoles, or perhaps even a tablet? Have you played the remake? Comment below, let me know. Who's your favorite character? For me, it was Aerith. So comment below, let me know your opinions. Thanks as always for watching. Bye.